Jordan Calloway stood at the heart of it all, a glass of Macallan in his hand, but barely tasting it. He was the reason they were all here. The host, the face of success, the man who had built his empire from the ground up. The Ravenel Investment Gala wasn't just a gathering of Charleston's elite, it was a statement. He had made it. Yet, for all the luxury surrounding him, the world felt hollow. He gave a tight nod as another guest approached, shaking hands, exchanging practice lines. He had spent years perfecting the art of conversation, knowing when to smirk, when to offer a calculated compliment. But tonight, his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't place it, but something felt off. Then, across the room, he saw her. The moment hit him like a shift in gravity, subtle but undeniable. A woman stood near the catering station, dark curls tucked neatly behind her ear as she whispered something to a server. He didn't recognize her at first, but there was something in the way she held herself, poised but hesitant, as if she were both meant to be here and desperately trying to disappear. His grip tightened around his glass. He knew that stance, that profile, the way her lips parted ever so slightly as she focused. Maria Hayes. His chest tightened. He hadn't seen her in years, not since... Jordan, a voice interrupted. He turned slightly, barely registering the investor in front of him, some real estate mogul eager to discuss a deal. He nodded at the right moments, but his focus remained on the woman across the room. Maria looked up suddenly, as if sensing him, and for a fraction of a second, their eyes met. The noise of the gala faded. Then, as quickly as it happened, she turned away, pressing a hand to her stomach, breathing in deeply before disappearing through the back entrance. Jordan exhaled slowly, his pulse steady, but insistent. He hadn't thought about Maria in years, not because she wasn't worth remembering, but because he had forced himself not to. Their time together had been brief but intense. She had been different from the women in his world. Grounded, determined, unwilling to play the games of the rich. And then, she was gone. No explanation. No goodbye. Just a memory he had learned to bury. "Excuse me," Jordan muttered to the investor, his feet already moving. He wasn't sure why, but something told him he needed to follow her. Through the staff corridor, past hurried servers balancing trays of hors d'oeuvres, he caught sight of her again near the outdoor terrace. She stood with her arms wrapped around herself, looking out over the water, as if debating whether to leave. Maria. She tensed at the sound of her name. For a moment she didn't turn, but then slowly she faced him. Her expression was unreadable. Jordan. His name on her lips carried something unspoken, something unfinished. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "What are you doing here?" She let out a soft, almost bitter laugh. "I could ask you the same thing, but we both know the answer." His eyes flickered over her, searching for a reason why, after all these years, she was here, now, in his world again. "You work for the event?" "A client of mine does," she answered carefully. "You left." The words were out before he could stop them. Maria's jaw tightened. "That was a long time ago, Jordan. Not long enough to forget." Her gaze flickered, and for the first time, he saw it. The hesitation, the weight of something deeper, something unsaid. Then, just as quickly, she schooled her expression. "I should go." Before he could respond, a small voice echoed through the night air. "Mom?" Jordan froze. Maria did too, her posture going rigid. Then, stepping out from behind one of the stone pillars, a small boy emerged, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Dark curls, light brown skin, dressed in a tiny suit too formal for his age. He was young, no older than 5. Jordan's mind blanked for a second before locking onto the only thing that mattered. The boy's eyes. His eyes. A slow, quiet inhale filled his lungs, but he couldn't move, couldn't speak. Maria reached for the boy, gently running a hand down his back. Leo, sweetheart, I told you to wait inside. The boy blinked up at her, then turned to Jordan curiously. Who's that? Maria's fingers curled slightly at her sides. Jordan still couldn't breathe. His body knew before his mind did, his soul recognizing something that logic hadn't caught up to yet. Because the boy wasn't just familiar, he was his. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. The music from the gala, the murmurs of conversation, the clinking of champagne glasses. It all faded into a distant hum. Jordan could only hear the quiet rustling of the wind against the terrace, the sound of the waves in the distance, and the soft voice of the little boy staring up at him. Maria's hand remained on the child's shoulder, fingers gently curled as if she could shield him from what was about to unfold. Her body was tense, like she was waiting for something, bracing for impact. Jordan still hadn't spoken. He couldn't. His mind was racing too fast, trying to catch up with the impossible. He was looking at himself, not just in the shape of the boy's eyes, hazel, flecked with gold, the same as his own. Not just in the way the child's hair curled at the ends, or the way his small brow furrowed in concentration. The same way Jordan's did when he was deep in thought. It was something deeper, an unshakable, soul-level recognition. Maria's voice was the first to break the silence. Leo, sweetheart, why don't you go back inside with Anna? The little boy looked between them, curiosity flickering across his face, but he didn't argue. He turned, wandering back toward the catering area, where Anna appeared, taking his hand and leading him away. Jordan finally exhaled. His eyes snapped to Maria, searching, demanding. Tell me I'm wrong. Maria's breath hitched. Tell me that's not my son. Her shoulders lifted slightly, as if absorbing the weight of the moment. Her lips parted, then closed again. A beat passed. She didn't deny it. A rush of air left Jordan's lungs, sharp and unforgiving. He took a step forward. You had my child, and you didn't tell me. Her head jerked slightly, her own emotions breaking through her carefully constructed armor. It's not that simple. His chest tightened. It's exactly that simple. Maria's jaw clenched, her voice barely above a whisper. Not when you left. Something in the way she said it, the rawness in her tone, sent a ripple of something unexpected through him. You knew where to find me, he said, his voice measured but filled with quiet urgency. Maria, He shook his head, trying to piece together the years, the choices, the moments that had somehow led to this. You should have told me. Her arms folded tightly across her chest. And then what? You would have dropped your empire overnight? Come running back? Don't lie to yourself, Jordan. You were on your way to becoming this. She gestured toward the glowing estate, the polished guests, the entire world he had built. Long before we ever met, I wasn't going to stop you. His hands curled at his sides, frustration twisting through him. You had no right to decide that for me. Maria's breath came uneven now, a quiet tremor to it, but she stood firm. And what would you have done if I had? What if I had called you in the middle of the night, told you I was pregnant? Would you have packed your bags? Would you have given up your deals, your clients, your company? Or would you have sent a check and a promise that you'd figure something out? He opened his mouth, but no words came, because he didn't know, and that realization hit him harder than anything. Maria's expression softened, just a fraction, a flicker of something almost like regret, but not quite. You can be angry, Jordan. You have every right to be. But don't stand here and act like we would have been a family if I had just said the words. He swallowed, the sharp edge of reality cutting into him. She wasn't wrong, but that didn't make it right. Jordan dragged a hand through his hair, forcing a steady breath. His mind was still spinning, trying to process the weight of what had just been dropped at his feet. 5 years. He had missed 5 years of his son's life. He didn't know what Leo's first word had been. He didn't know what made him laugh, what bedtime stories he liked, if he preferred peanut butter or jelly sandwiches, or if he hated the crusts. He had lost so much, and he hadn't even known. His throat tightened. What does he know about me? Maria hesitated. That told him everything. A bitter laugh left his lips. Nothing. He knows nothing. I wasn't keeping him from you. Then what do you call this? He asked, voice quiet but sharp. Maria flinched, but she didn't look away. I call it trying to protect my son. His eyes darkened. From what? She hesitated again, just long enough to drive another wedge of frustration between them. Jordan took a slow step forward, lowering his voice, his words precise. Whatever you think you were doing, whatever reasons you convinced yourself were good enough to keep my own son from me, you don't get to make that choice anymore. Maria's lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. I want to know him, Jordan continued, his voice tightening. I deserve to know him. Maria looked away, staring out over the water, and for the first time, he saw it, the fear, not of him, but of what this meant, what it could change. She let out a slow breath, like she was weighing a decision she had already lost the power to make. Finally, her eyes met his again, and though she was still guarded, something had shifted. A battle had begun. Jordan didn't know what it would take to win, but for the first time in years, he knew what he wanted, and he wasn't walking away this time. The night air was thick with tension, heavier than the humid Charleston breeze that swept over the terrace. Maria held her breath, forcing herself to stay composed, but inside, her emotions churned like a storm-tossed sea. Jordan wasn't just asking for answers anymore. He was demanding a place in Leo's life, and for the first time she wasn't sure if she could stop him. Jordan hadn't moved. His gaze stayed locked on hers, intense, unwavering. It was the same look that had once made her believe in him, in them. The same look that had made leaving so damn hard. But this wasn't 6 years ago. The stakes weren't just heartbreak and regret anymore. The sound of footsteps echoed behind them, breaking the standoff. Maria turned to see Anna approaching, her expression unreadable as she stopped beside them. Leo's back inside, Anna said carefully, her eyes flickering between them. I took him to the kitchen with the staff. He's fine. Maria exhaled, tension releasing just slightly. Thank you. Anna nodded but didn't leave. She was assessing, calculating. Finally, she turned her sharp gaze on Jordan. So, you know now? His jaw tightened. Yeah, I know. Silence stretched between them. Anna had always been Maria's protector, her closest friend, the one who had been there through everything, and right now, Maria could feel the weight of her disapproval pressing against her back like a warning. Jordan shifted his stance, running a hand down his face before looking back at Maria. We're not done with this conversation. Maria forced a steady breath. Number. We're not. She knew there was no escaping it. No slipping away into the night like she had all those years ago. This was happening, and she wasn't ready for it. Jordan didn't press her any further, but she could see it in his eyes. This wasn't over. With one last look, he turned and walked back toward the ballroom, leaving her standing there with her pulse still racing. Anna waited until he was out of earshot before crossing her arms. You okay? Maria let out a hollow laugh. Define okay. Anna gave her a pointed look. Maria. She ran a shaky hand through her hair. I don't know. I didn't plan for this. I never thought... I mean, what are the odds that he'd just walk back into my life like this? Anna sighed, lowering her voice. Yeah, well, that's the thing about unfinished business. It has a way of finding you. Maria swallowed hard. I don't know what to do. You do, Anna corrected. You just don't want to admit it. Maria met her gaze, desperation creeping into her voice. He's going to fight for this, isn't he? Anna nodded. Yes, and you need to ask yourself if that's really a bad thing. Maria looked away. It wasn't that simple. It never had been. Jordan wasn't sure how long he stood at the bar, staring at the ice melting in his untouched drink. His mind wouldn't stop racing, replaying the last 20 minutes over and over. The look in Maria's eyes, the hesitation in her voice, the undeniable truth that had just detonated his entire reality. Leo was his son. His son. The word felt foreign and familiar all at once, like a melody he hadn't realized he'd always known. Mr. Calloway? Jordan blinked, pulled from his thoughts as he turned to find a familiar face watching him. Daniel Vega. The journalist stood beside him, a glass of wine in one hand, his other tucked casually into his pocket. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp. Too sharp. Jordan exhaled slowly. Daniel. Daniel lifted his glass slightly in greeting. Hell of a night, huh? Jordan's fingers curled around his tumbler. He didn't like the way Daniel was looking at him. The man had a reputation for uncovering stories people didn't want told. Jordan forced a neutral expression. It's a gala. It's meant to be eventful. Daniel tilted his head slightly, as if considering his words. Then, casually, he asked, "Who was that woman you were talking to outside?" Jordan's jaw tensed, but he kept his voice even. "I talk to a lot of people, Daniel. You'll have to be more specific." Daniel smirked. "Come on, Jordan. A guy like you, looking that rattled in the middle of his own event? You don't see that every day. It piqued my curiosity." Jordan remained silent, refusing to take the bait. Daniel took a sip of his wine before setting it down on the bar. "You know, it's funny, I did some digging earlier. Saw an old internship roster from one of your first startups. Guess whose name popped up?" Jordan's grip on his glass tightened. Daniel leaned in slightly. "Maria Hayes." A slow, uneasy pulse beat at the base of Jordan's skull. Daniel's smirk widened, his voice dropping just enough to feel like a threat. "Now, I don't know what's going on there, but my gut tells me there's a story. And you know me, Jordan. I love a good story." Jordan's throat tightened. He wasn't naive. He knew exactly where this was going. Daniel was hunting. And if he found what he was looking for, Jordan knew the fallout wouldn't just affect him. It would affect Leo. The thought sent a wave of protectiveness crashing over him, sharp and unexpected. This wasn't just about him anymore. He set his drink down and met Daniel's gaze head-on, his voice calm but firm. "Be careful where you go digging, Daniel. Some stories aren't meant to be told." Daniel studied him for a long moment, then smiled. "We'll see about that." With that, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. Jordan exhaled, forcing down the frustration curling in his chest. This was spiraling faster than he could control. And for the first time in his life, he realized control wasn't something he was going to have anymore. Not when it came to Maria, not when it came to Leo, and not when it came to the past he thought he'd left behind. The gala was still in full swing, laughter and music blending into a seamless hum of wealth and influence, but Maria barely heard any of it. She stood near the edge of the ballroom now, her back pressed against a cool marble column, trying to steady her breath. This was happening. There was no undoing it. Jordan knew. He knew about Leo. And if the fire in his eyes had been any indication, he wasn't about to let it go. Maria had spent years preparing for this moment, imagining what she would say, how she would defend her choices, how she would protect her son. But now that it was real, she felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, the ground beneath her cracking apart. "Maria!" She flinched at the sound of her name, and turned to see Anna stepping toward her, her expression sharp with concern. "You look like you're about to pass out." Maria forced a breath, shaking her head. "I'm fine." Anna raised a brow. "Right, that's why you look like you just walked away from a car wreck." Maria exhaled slowly, rubbing her temple. It's bad, Anna. Anna crossed her arms, her voice gentler now. How bad? Maria swallowed. He wants to know Leo. The words felt strange on her tongue, like something too big to say out loud. Anna let out a slow breath. Well, that's not exactly a surprise, is it? Maria looked away. I don't know what to do. Anna studied her for a moment, then stepped closer. What are you so afraid of? Maria let out a hollow laugh. You mean besides the fact that my son's father just showed up out of nowhere and wants a relationship with him? Anna's expression didn't waver. That's not what I'm asking. Maria's stomach tightened. She didn't want to say it, didn't want to admit it, but it was there, clawing at the edges of her mind, refusing to be ignored. I don't know if I can trust him, she whispered. Not with Leo. Anna didn't respond right away. Instead, she leaned against the column beside Maria, looking out at the ballroom. I get it, Anna said finally. You've spent the last 5 years making sure Leo is safe, making sure he doesn't get hurt. But Jordan isn't some stranger off the street. He's his father. Maria's throat tightened. That doesn't mean he's ready to be one. Anna glanced at her. Maybe. But are you ready to keep pretending that Leo doesn't need him? Maria felt the words hit, sharp and deep. She turned away. I need air. She didn't wait for Anna to follow. Jordan wasn't sure how much more of the gala he could stomach. He had spent years mastering the art of playing host, keeping the right people happy, maintaining his influence, making sure the deals being made in this room all worked in his favor. But tonight, none of it mattered. His world had shifted. Leo, he had a son, and for 5 years, he hadn't known. Jordan moved toward the terrace again, needing to escape the heat of the ballroom, needing space to think. But the moment he stepped outside, he saw her. Maria stood at the edge of the railing, her hands gripping the stone as she stared out at the water, her expression unreadable. She didn't turn when she spoke. I figured you'd find me out here. Jordan took a few steps closer, stopping a few feet away. I needed air. Maria huffed a quiet laugh. Guess that makes 2 of us. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them stretched tight, filled with everything unsaid. Jordan exhaled. Why didn't you tell me? Maria closed her eyes briefly before turning to face him. You left. The words landed like a blow. You were building your company, she continued, her voice quieter now. Traveling constantly, expanding, closing deals across the world. I was 22, Jordan. I didn't know how to reach you, and by the time I figured it out, it was too late. His jaw tightened. You should have told me anyway. She let out a slow breath, looking away. And then what? What would you have done? His response was immediate. I would have been there. Maria's lips pressed together, something flickering behind her eyes, something like doubt. Would you? Jordan felt his stomach tighten. Yes, he wanted to believe that, needed to believe it. But a part of him, one he didn't want to acknowledge, knew that maybe she was right. Maybe at 23, with a company on the rise and everything on the line, he wouldn't have been the man Leo needed him to be. Still, that didn't make it fair. It didn't change the fact that she had made the choice for him. Jordan swallowed, his voice steadier now. I can't change the past, Maria, but I can change what happens next. Her gaze met his. And what exactly does that mean? It means I want to know my son. Maria exhaled, looking torn. Jordan. I'm not asking, he interrupted. I'm telling you. She froze. He softened his voice just slightly, but the determination didn't waver. I don't care how we do this. I don't care what rules you want to set, but I will be in Leo's life. Maria looked away, her fingers tightening around the railing. He could see the battle happening inside her, the fear, the hesitation, the deep protective instinct that had kept Leo safe for so long. But he wasn't going anywhere. After a long silence, Maria finally exhaled. "Leo doesn't know you," she said quietly, "and I'm not going to let you just waltz into his life and confuse him." Jordan nodded. "Then let's take it slow. Let me meet him the right way." Maria bit her lip, considering. "I need time." Jordan met her gaze. "Then take it, but don't take too long." A tense silence settled between them, the weight of everything still hanging in the air. Finally, Maria nodded once, just enough to let him know she had heard him. That maybe, just maybe, she was willing to let him try. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Maria sat at the small breakfast nook in her townhouse, the scent of fresh coffee curling through the air, but she barely touched the cup in front of her. The early morning light spilled through the window, casting a golden glow over the hardwood floors, but she wasn't looking at the view. Her fingers traced the rim of the mug, mind distant, heart unsteady. Leo sat across from her, swinging his feet under the table as he scribbled in his sketchbook, his tiny brow furrowed in concentration. His curls were still tousled from sleep, and there was a small smear of jam on his cheek from the toast he had barely eaten. He was drawing, again, always drawing. This morning, it looked like the fountain in Waterfront Park, with the giant pineapple spout at the center. But something about this sketch was different. He had drawn a man beside the fountain. A tall man in a suit, looking off into the distance. Maria swallowed hard. She knew who it was before she even asked. Leo didn't know. He didn't realize that last night had changed everything, that the carefully built world she had created for him was no longer safe from the past. "Sweetheart," she said softly, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Can I ask you something?" Leo didn't look up. "Mm-hmm." She hesitated, then carefully chose her words. If you could ask anything about your dad, what would you want to know?" His pencil stopped moving. For a moment, he was completely still. Then, slowly, he lifted his gaze. His hazel eyes, Jordan's eyes, held something she wasn't prepared for. Everything. The single word hit her straight in the chest. Maria exhaled, fighting the tightness in her throat. "Okay," she murmured. "Okay." Leo tilted his head, curiosity flickering across his face. "Why?" Maria opened her mouth, then closed it again. How did she even begin to explain? "Because your father is back. Because he wants to know you. Because I don't know how to protect you from what happens next." She reached across the table, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. "Because one day you're going to meet him." Leo's small fingers curled around his pencil, his lips parted slightly. "Really?" Maria's stomach twisted. She wasn't sure what reaction she'd been expecting. Hesitation, maybe? Uncertainty? But what she saw instead was something she had never let herself consider. Hope. "Would you want to?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. Leo's expression turned thoughtful. He bit his lip, considering. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "I think so." Maria pressed her palm against her chest, grounding herself against the storm of emotions rising inside her. It was happening, whether she was ready or not. Jordan checked his watch for the third time, standing outside the entrance to Waterfront Park. The late morning sun had warmed the cobblestone pathways, and a light breeze from the harbor rustled the palm trees. Families walked by, couples sat on the benches near the fountain, and for the first time in his life, Jordan felt nervous. Not about business, not about a deal, not about anything he had spent the last 10 years perfecting. He was about to meet his son. The realization still rattled him. He had spent the entire night replaying every moment with Maria, every word, every look, every hesitation. He knew she didn't trust him yet. He knew she was terrified of what this meant. But she had agreed, and now he was here. His heart pounded as he looked toward the entrance. A moment later, he saw her. Maria walked beside Leo, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. He was talking, animated as always, his hands moving as he spoke. He had Maria's expression when he was excited, full of energy, eyebrows lifting just slightly as he spoke, as if he was always one thought ahead of himself. Jordan took a slow breath. Then, as if sensing something, Leo stopped. His gaze lifted. Their eyes met. Jordan felt the air shift around him. Maria hesitated, looking down at Leo, giving him the choice. Leo didn't move at first. His small fingers tightened around the strap of the backpack slung over his shoulder. His brows furrowed slightly, as if trying to make sense of the moment. Jordan forced himself to stay still, to wait. Then, after what felt like a lifetime, Leo took a step forward. Maria exhaled. Jordan swallowed, and just like that, they closed the space between them. Leo tilted his head up, studying Jordan the same way Jordan was studying him. Neither of them spoke right away. Jordan could feel Maria watching, holding her breath, waiting. Finally, Leo asked, "Are you my dad?" Jordan's chest ached. He crouched down slightly so they were eye level. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I am." Leo considered that for a second. He studied Jordan with careful eyes, as if trying to solve a puzzle. Then, to Jordan's complete shock, Leo asked, "Do you like ice cream?" Jordan blinked. Maria let out a quiet laugh, barely believing what she was hearing. Jordan cleared his throat, a smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, I do." Leo narrowed his eyes. "What kind?" Jordan straightened a little, his heart feeling lighter than it had in hours. "I guess that depends. What's your favorite?" Leo crossed his arms, serious. "Chocolate chip." Jordan nodded, as if weighing the decision carefully. "Good choice." Leo seemed to consider this answer, then gave a small nod of approval. "Okay." Jordan exhaled a quiet laugh. "Okay." Leo hesitated, then tilted his head. "Can we get some?" Jordan felt something deep inside him shift, something warm, something real. He looked up at Maria, waiting for her permission. Her lips were parted slightly, a mix of disbelief and relief flickering across her face. Then, finally, she gave him a small nod. Jordan looked back at Leo. "Yeah, kid," he said, smiling. "Let's get some ice cream." The soft hum of conversation and the clinking of spoons against glass filled the small ice cream shop, tucked into a quiet corner of Charleston's historic district. The scent of fresh waffle cones and vanilla swirled through the air, a stark contrast to the tension sitting between Jordan and Maria as they watched Leo carefully pick at his chocolate chip ice cream. Jordan still couldn't believe this was happening, that he was sitting across from his son, that just hours ago Leo hadn't even known his name, and now he was here. Leo swung his legs under the table, completely unaware of the weight of the moment pressing down on his parents. His focus remained on his cup of ice cream, occasionally glancing up at Jordan with cautious curiosity, as if trying to figure out what to do with him. Jordan didn't blame him. He didn't know what to do either. "So," Jordan finally said, clearing his throat. "Chocolate chip, huh? Strong choice." Leo nodded solemnly, scooping up another spoonful. "Mom says it's 'cause I have good taste." Jordan smiled, glancing at Maria. "I'd say she's right." Maria gave him a tight-lipped look, her hands wrapped around her untouched cup of ice cream. She was still watching him closely, like a mother lion ready to pounce at the first sign of danger. Jordan wasn't stupid. He knew she didn't trust him yet. Maybe she never would. But he wasn't leaving this table without making sure his son knew who he was. Leo stared at him for a long moment, then tilted his head. "Do you like chocolate chip too?" Jordan set his spoon down. "I think I do now." Leo squinted at him, as if deciding whether or not to believe him. "What was your favorite before?" Jordan leaned forward slightly. lowering his voice like he was about to share a secret. Mint chocolate chip. Leo wrinkled his nose. That's weird. Maria snorted softly into her cup, and Jordan felt an unexpected warmth spread through his chest at the sound. Leo thought for a moment, then asked, "Why?" Jordan raised an eyebrow. "Why is it weird?" "No." Leo licked his spoon, deep in thought. "Why'd you change it?" Jordan hesitated. "Because I want to know everything about you. Because I don't want to miss another second of your life. Because I've lost too much already." Instead, he gave a small shrug. "Guess I just like what you like." Leo's small face scrunched up in a way that reminded Jordan so much of himself. It almost hurt. Then, after a long pause, he nodded. "Okay." Maria let out a breath next to him, a mixture of relief and something else Jordan couldn't quite place. Leo scraped the last bit of ice cream from his cup, then tilted his head. "Are you rich?" The question came out so casually that Jordan nearly choked on his next breath. Maria closed her eyes briefly, pressing her fingers against her temple. "Leo," she muttered. Leo blinked up at Jordan, completely unfazed. "What? Anna says he's, like, really rich." Jordan let out a quiet laugh. "Anna said that, huh?" Leo nodded. "She said you have fancy cars and wear watches that cost as much as a house." Maria groaned. "I'm gonna kill her." Jordan leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "Well, what do you think?" Leo thought about it for a second. "I think you don't look rich." Jordan grinned. "Yeah?" Leo nodded again. "You don't even have a crown." Jordan laughed, genuinely this time. "I'll work on that." Maria rubbed her forehead. "This is not how I imagined this going." Jordan glanced at her. "How did you imagine it?" She didn't answer, because the truth was, neither of them had ever truly imagined this moment. They had both spent years avoiding it, pretending it would never come. And yet, here they were. Leo suddenly straightened in his seat, his expression shifting into something more serious. "Do you live here now?" Jordan's smile faded slightly. He exhaled, knowing this was a question that actually mattered. "I live in New York," he admitted. "But I can come visit, a lot." Leo tilted his head. "Like how much?" Jordan looked at Maria, but she was watching Leo, waiting to see how he reacted. "As much as you want," Jordan said, voice careful. "Whenever your mum says it's okay." Leo stared at him, thinking. Then, finally, he gave a small nod. "Okay." Jordan let out a quiet breath of relief. "Okay." Leo yawned, rubbing his eyes, and Maria glanced at her watch. "It's getting late," she said. "We should head back." Leo grumbled but didn't argue, stretching his arms over his head before scooting out of the booth. Jordan stood as well, shoving his hands in his pockets, suddenly unsure what came next. Maria turned to Leo. "Say goodbye." Leo frowned slightly, then looked up at Jordan. "You're leaving?" Jordan hesitated, heart pulling at the small frown on his son's face. He looked at Maria, waiting for permission. Maria's lips pressed together. Then, after a long pause, she sighed. "You can walk us to the car." It wasn't much, but it was something. Jordan nodded, falling into step beside them as they stepped out onto the quiet Charleston street. The sun was beginning to set, the sky painted in soft hues of gold and pink, the breeze warm but gentle. Leo walked between them, occasionally kicking at the loose bricks in the sidewalk, humming some tune under his breath. Jordan watched him, memorizing everything. The way he moved, the way he tilted his head when he was thinking, the way he stole quick glances up at him, as if still trying to figure him out. When they reached Maria's car, Leo yawned again, stretching his arms up. Maria smiled softly, reaching down to lift him into his car seat. "Mum," Leo mumbled, half asleep already. "Can I see him again?" Maria's body stiffened slightly. Jordan held his breath. Maria turned, her eyes meeting his. Something in them softened, just enough for him to see the woman he used to know. Then she nodded. Jordan swallowed past the lump in his throat. "Good night, Leo." Leo mumbled something incoherent, already drifting off. Maria closed the door gently, letting out a slow breath before turning back to Jordan. He took a step forward, lowering his voice. "Thank you." Maria studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "This doesn't mean I trust you yet." Jordan gave a small smile. "I know." She exhaled again, then shook her head. "But it's a start." Jordan nodded, something settling in his chest. A start. That was more than he had yesterday. And for now, it was enough. Maria stood in her kitchen, staring at the sink, though she wasn't really seeing it. The dishes from breakfast sat untouched, a half-empty coffee cup resting beside the faucet. The morning light filtered through the windows, casting soft shadows on the hardwood floor. But her mind wasn't here. It was still stuck on last night, on the moment Leo had asked if he could see Jordan again. She hadn't been prepared for that. Maria had spent years keeping her world and Jordan's completely separate, convinced it was the only way to protect her son. And now, in a matter of hours, everything had shifted. Leo wanted to know his father, and despite every part of her that screamed for caution, she had let it happen. Now there was no turning back. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She turned, frowning slightly. It was still early, too early for visitors. She walked to the door, wiping her hands on her pajama pants before pulling it open. Jordan stood on the other side. Maria's stomach tightened. He looked different in the daylight, less like the poised, untouchable businessman from last night, and more like the man she used to know. His suit was gone, replaced by a simple grey sweater and dark jeans. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he had run his hands through it too many times. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Finally, Maria sighed. "It's early." Jordan gave a small, almost sheepish smile. "Didn't think you'd let me in if I gave you time to change your mind." She exhaled, crossing her arms. "You're not wrong." He shifted slightly, his expression growing more serious. "Can we talk?" Maria hesitated. Then, without a word, she stepped aside. Jordan walked in, glancing around. The last time he had been in her home was years ago, back when she had lived in a tiny apartment with mismatched furniture and textbooks stacked on every surface. Now, the space was warm, lived in. There were framed drawings on the wall, Leo's, no doubt. A soft grey couch with a knitted throw draped over the back, and in the corner a shelf filled with children's books. It was a home, a life, and he hadn't been a part of it. Maria walked to the kitchen, grabbing the coffee pot. "Do you want some?" Jordan blinked, caught off guard by the normalcy of the question. "Yeah, sure." She poured a cup, sliding it across the counter before leaning against the sink. "What do you want, Jordan?" Jordan wrapped his fingers around the mug, exhaling slowly. "I want to be in Leo's life." Maria closed her eyes briefly. She had known this was coming, but hearing him say it out loud still made her chest tighten. When she didn't respond, Jordan set the cup down. "Look, I know I can't make up for lost time, and I know you don't trust me yet, but I'm not going anywhere, Maria." Her eyes flickered to his, searching for something. Maybe weakness, maybe hesitation, but she didn't find either. She let out a slow breath. "It's not that simple." Jordan leaned forward. "It can be." Maria shook her head. "You don't just show up after 5 years and decide you want to be a father. That's not how this works." "I know that," Jordan said, his voice steady. "I'm not asking you to let me waltz in and take over. I just want a chance, to know him, to be there." Maria looked away, gripping the edge of the counter. "You have no idea what it's been like, Jordan. Raising him alone, making every decision by myself, wondering if..." She stopped, pressing her lips together. Jordan's gaze softened. Wondering if what? Maria swallowed hard. If I made the right choice? Silence stretched between them. Jordan exhaled. You did what you thought was best. She laughed bitterly. Did I? He studied her for a moment. Would you have told me eventually? Maria hesitated, and that was all the answer he needed. Jordan ran a hand down his face. You didn't trust me. Maria's throat tightened. It wasn't about trust. It was about reality. You were gone. You had your whole life mapped out and I... She gestured vaguely. I was never part of that plan. Jordan's chest ached at the weight of her words, because once upon a time, he had thought she might be. I would have come back, he said quietly. Maria shook her head. You can't say that. Yes, I can, Jordan said firmly, because I would have. If I had known Maria, I would have been there. She exhaled shakily, looking away. Jordan softened his voice. Let me be there now. Maria stayed quiet for a long time. Then, finally, she nodded. Jordan let out a slow breath. A chance. That's all he needed. Leo was in the backyard, sitting on the wooden steps of the porch, sketchbook balanced on his knees. The wind rustled the trees, and birds chirped in the distance, but he was focused, his small fingers carefully shading the outline of a bridge. He didn't hear the door open behind him. Jordan stepped outside, hands in his pockets. Maria stayed by the doorway, watching. Leo finally looked up, squinting slightly in the sunlight. Jordan hesitated. Mind if I sit? Leo blinked, then shrugged. Okay. Jordan lowered himself onto the step beside him, keeping a bit of space between them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jordan glanced at the sketchbook. What are you drawing? Leo tilted the page so he could see. The bridge downtown, the one with all the boats under it. Jordan nodded. It's good. Leo looked at him carefully. Do you draw? Jordan smiled. Not very well. Leo seemed to consider this. Then, after a pause, he flipped to a blank page and held out the pencil. You can try. Jordan stared at the pencil for a second, surprised. Leo waited. Finally, Jordan took it, and for the first time, they drew together. Jordan sat on the porch steps, the pencil feeling foreign in his fingers. It had been years since he'd drawn anything, and even then, he had never been great at it. But Leo was watching him expectantly, waiting, and for the first time in his life, Jordan didn't want to disappoint. He pressed the tip of the pencil against the page, trying to mimic the lines Leo had already drawn. It wasn't perfect. His angles were too sharp, his shading uneven, but he kept going. Leo watched silently for a moment, then scooted a little closer, peering over Jordan's shoulder. That's not how the bridge looks. Jordan huffed a quiet laugh. Yeah, I figured that out. Leo tilted his head, then reached over and gently took the pencil from Jordan's hand. You have to do it like this, he said, darkening one of the arches with small, precise strokes. Jordan watched him, something tightening in his chest. This was the first time Leo had voluntarily interacted with him beyond a question or an observation. The first time he had let Jordan into his world, even if it was just through a pencil and paper. Maria stood near the door, arms crossed as she leaned against the frame. She was watching too, not interfering, not pulling Leo away, just watching. Jordan glanced at her, and for a brief second, their eyes met. There was something unreadable in her expression. Hesitation, yes, but also something softer. Leo finished shading in the lines, then sat back, nodding in approval. Better, Jordan smirked. So I passed. Leo thought about it for a second, then gave a small shrug. Almost. Maria chuckled, shaking her head. Tough crowd. Leo turned to her. Can I show him my other drawings? Maria hesitated, glancing at Jordan, and for a moment he was sure she was going to say no. Then, with a slow exhale, she nodded. Go get them. Leo beamed, scrambling up from the steps and hurrying inside. The second he was out of earshot, Maria let out a breath, rubbing the back of her neck. This is weird. Jordan leaned back on his hands, glancing at her. Yeah, but in a good way. Maria didn't respond to that. Instead, she ran a hand through her hair, watching the door where Leo had disappeared. He's never had anyone else. It's always just been me. Jordan nodded slowly, understanding the unspoken message. And now I'm here. Maria's lips pressed together. And now you're here. The weight of that truth settled between them. Neither of them had planned for this. Neither of them had imagined a world where Jordan would come back, where he would sit on the porch of Maria's house and draw bridges with his son. But here they were. Leo came bounding back outside, sketchbook in hand, and flopped onto the steps beside Jordan. He flipped through the pages quickly, stopping at one of his older drawings. This one's my favorite. Jordan looked down at the paper, his chest tightening slightly. It was a drawing of a family. Just two people. A mother and a son, standing in front of a house. There was no father. Jordan swallowed hard, keeping his voice steady. You're really good at this. Leo grinned. I want to be an architect when I grow up. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Yeah, Leo nodded. I like making things, like bridges and buildings, stuff that lasts. Jordan stared at him, something deep and unfamiliar settling in his chest. He had spent his entire life chasing success, chasing things that could be measured in numbers, in deals, in market shares. Leo, at 5 years old, already understood something he didn't. He wanted to build things that lasted. Maria shifted beside them, arms still crossed. Jordan glanced at her, but she wasn't looking at him. She was watching Leo, a small, knowing smile on her lips. Jordan cleared his throat, dragging his gaze back to his son. You know, I have a friend who's an architect. He designs skyscrapers. Leo's eyes widened. Really? Jordan nodded. Yeah, maybe one day I can introduce you. Leo considered that, then nodded. Okay. It was a simple response, but it carried more weight than Jordan had expected. He had been given a chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. Maria exhaled, running a hand through her hair. All right, kid. We've got errands to run. Leo groaned but didn't argue. He carefully closed his sketchbook and stood, stretching his arms above his head. Are you coming back? The question caught Jordan off guard. Maria tensed slightly beside him. Jordan looked down at his son, at the hope flickering in his eyes, and knew there was only one answer. Yeah, buddy, he said softly. I'm coming back. Leo nodded, seemingly satisfied, then ran inside to grab his shoes. Jordan stood slowly, turning to Maria. I meant that. Maria let out a slow breath. I know. Jordan hesitated, then took a step closer. Let me take you both to dinner tonight. Maria blinked. What? A real dinner, Jordan said. Not just ice cream. Maria stared at him, conflicted. Jordan, it's just dinner, he said, voice gentle. Leo wants to know me. Let me do this the right way. Maria searched his face, then exhaled sharply. Fine. A slow smile spread across Jordan's lips. Fine? She rolled her eyes. Yes, but I swear, if you take us to some overpriced steakhouse, I will walk out. Jordan smirked. Noted. Maria shook her head, mumbling something under her breath as she turned back toward the house. Jordan watched her go, his chest feeling lighter than it had in years. This was happening. For the first time since coming back to Charleston, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The small Italian restaurant Maria had picked wasn't the kind of place Jordan was used to. It wasn't sleek or modern, with marble floors and white tablecloths. It was warm, inviting, red brick walls lined with old family photos, Wooden tables crowded close together, the scent of garlic and basil lingering in the air. It felt like a place where memories were made. Maria slid into the booth across from Jordan, her expression unreadable. Leo sat between them, his small hands immediately reaching for the crayons and paper the hostess had left at the table. He didn't hesitate. He just started drawing, like the world outside his imagination didn't exist. Jordan envied that. A waitress arrived, setting down menus. "Welcome to Piccolo's. Can I get you started with something to drink?" Leo didn't even look up. "Lemonade." Maria shot him a look, but he remained focused on his drawing. She sighed. "Make it water." Leo groaned. "Mom." Maria arched a brow. "Try again." Leo exhaled dramatically, but didn't argue. "Water." The waitress chuckled, jotting it down before looking at the adults. Jordan smiled. "I'll have the same." Maria barely glanced at the menu. "Iced tea." The waitress nodded. "I'll be back with those in a second." As soon as she walked away, an awkward silence settled over the table. Jordan cleared his throat, searching for something to say. Maria was clearly waiting to see how this played out, and Leo was absorbed in his sketching, making no effort to fill the space. "So," Jordan started, leaning forward slightly, "what are you working on?" Leo kept his eyes on the paper. "A house." Jordan tilted his head. "Your dream house?" Leo nodded. "Yeah, it's got to have big windows and a big porch and a tree house." Jordan smiled. "That's important." Leo nodded again, still focused. "And a backyard big enough for a dog." Maria exhaled a quiet laugh. "You don't even like dogs." Leo glanced up. "I might." Jordan grinned. "Dogs are a big responsibility." Leo shrugged. "So is being a dad." Maria's hand froze halfway to her drink. Jordan blinked. Leo kept coloring, completely unaware of the way his words had just shifted the energy at the table. Maria slowly set her glass down. "Leo." "What?" Leo asked, glancing up. "I'm just saying. It's true." Jordan exhaled, looking at Maria, who looked like she was considering crawling under the table. He turned back to his son. "You're right," he said carefully. "Being a dad is a big responsibility." Leo stared at him for a moment. "So, are you going to be one?" Maria sucked in a breath. Jordan's chest tightened. Leo didn't say it with anger. He wasn't accusing. He was just asking, like he needed to know before he got his hopes up. Jordan leaned forward, meeting his son's gaze. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I am." Leo studied him, his small fingers gripping the crayon a little tighter. Then, after a long pause, he nodded. "Okay." Maria let out a breath she'd been holding. Jordan sat back, his heart pounding harder than it should have been over such a simple word. Okay. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear that. The waitress returned, setting down their drinks and taking their orders. Leo barely looked up, still deep in his sketching, and Maria avoided Jordan's gaze as she ordered quickly. When the waitress left again, Maria finally spoke. "So," she said, stirring her iced tea, "how long are you staying in Charleston?" Jordan set his glass down. "I don't know yet." Maria's brow lifted slightly. "You don't know?" Jordan met her gaze. "I didn't plan to stay long, but things changed." Maria exhaled, looking away. "That's an understatement." Jordan kept his voice calm. "I'll stay as long as it takes." Maria hesitated. "Takes for what?" "For you to believe me," he said simply. Maria's fingers tightened around her straw. She looked like she wanted to argue, but for once, she didn't. Leo suddenly held up his paper. "Done." Maria turned, grateful for the distraction. "Let's see." Leo pushed the drawing toward them, and Jordan took it, his chest tightening at what he saw. It wasn't just a house. It was a family, a mother, a son, and now, a father. Jordan stared at the image, something deep inside him shifting. This wasn't just a sketch to Leo. This was his hope, his quiet wish for something he'd never had. Jordan swallowed the lump in his throat and smiled. "It's perfect." Leo beamed. Maria said nothing, but she didn't look away. Maria pulled into her driveway, turning off the engine and gripping the steering wheel for a second longer than necessary. The evening had gone better than she had expected, better than she had prepared herself for, and that terrified her. Leo had fallen asleep in the back seat, his head tilted to the side, his small fingers still curled around his sketchbook. The dinner at Piccolo's had started off awkward, but somehow by the end, Jordan had managed to ease into conversation with Leo in a way that felt natural. Too natural. Maria exhaled slowly. She wasn't ready for this. Wasn't ready for the way Jordan fit into Leo's life so seamlessly, for the way Leo had looked at him like he was something worth believing in. Because if she let that happen, if she let Leo get attached, and Jordan left again. She closed her eyes briefly, pushing the thought away. "Need help?" Maria jumped slightly, turning to see Jordan standing beside the car, his hands in his pockets, waiting. "I can carry him in," he offered, voice quieter now. Maria hesitated. It was a simple request, but it wasn't simple at all. This was her routine, her world. She had spent years doing this alone. Letting someone else in, especially him, felt like giving up a piece of the armor she had built around herself and Leo. Still, when she glanced back at her son, peaceful and unbothered in his sleep, something inside her softened. She nodded. Jordan stepped forward, moving with careful ease as he unbuckled Leo's seatbelt. The boy stirred slightly but didn't wake as Jordan lifted him effortlessly into his arms. Maria swallowed, watching as Jordan adjusted Leo against his chest, holding him like he had done it 1,000 times before. They walked toward the house in silence. Maria unlocked the door, stepping inside first, flipping on a lamp in the living room. The warm glow cast soft shadows along the walls, illuminating the framed drawings and small touches of their life together. Jordan took it all in, but he didn't say anything. Maria led him down the hall to Leo's room, pushing the door open just enough for them to slip inside. The small space was filled with pieces of Leo's world, books stacked neatly on a shelf, a few stuffed animals in the corner, and drawings taped to the wall, each one more detailed than the last. Jordan lowered Leo onto the bed, carefully tucking the blanket around him. Leo mumbled something under his breath, shifting slightly, but didn't wake. His small fingers curled into the fabric of his blanket, completely content. Jordan stood there for a moment, just watching him, taking him in. Maria watched him. Something in his expression made her chest ache. It was more than realization, more than shock. It was something deeper, something breaking open inside him. He turned, his voice barely above a whisper. "I missed all of this." Maria exhaled slowly. "I know." Jordan let his gaze linger on Leo for another second, then stepped back, nodding toward the door. Maria followed him out, closing it softly behind them. They stood in the hallway, the air thick with unspoken words. Jordan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. "I don't know how to do this." Maria looked at him. "Neither do I." He let out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. "That makes two of us." A pause. Maria crossed her arms, leaning against the wall. "He likes you." Jordan glanced at her, something unreadable in his expression. "I like him." She swallowed, pressing her lips together. "That's what I'm afraid of." Jordan's jaw tightened slightly. "You think I'm going to let him down?" Maria didn't answer. She didn't need to. Jordan let out a slow breath, his voice quieter now. "I'm not the same person I was back then." Maria looked away. "Maybe not, but I don't know how to believe that." Jordan stepped closer, his voice firm but gentle. "Then let me prove it." She met his gaze, something in her chest tightening. This was dangerous, letting him in, letting this happen. But when she looked at him, really looked at him, she saw something she hadn't been expecting. She saw someone who wasn't leaving. Maria exhaled, pressing her fingers against her temples. This is a bad idea. Jordan smirked slightly. Probably, she sighed, dropping her hands. I don't know how to do this, Jordan. Then let's figure it out, he said simply. The words settled between them. Slowly, carefully, Maria nodded. Jordan exhaled, the smallest hint of relief flashing across his face. Good. Maria shook her head, glancing toward Leo's door. You should go. Jordan nodded once, understanding. But before he left, he hesitated, looking at her one last time. I meant what I said before. Maria tilted her head. About what? Jordan held her gaze. I'm not going anywhere. She didn't answer, because for the first time in years, she wanted to believe him, and that scared her more than anything. Maria had spent the entire night staring at the ceiling. No matter how many times she turned over, how many deep breaths she took, sleep refused to come. Every time she closed her eyes, all she could see was Jordan. The way he had held Leo like he belonged there. The quiet ache in his voice when he said, I missed all of this. The worst part, she believed him, and that was dangerous. Morning light streamed through the bedroom window, casting a soft glow on the walls. Maria finally sighed and sat up, rubbing a hand over her face. She wasn't ready for today. She wasn't ready for any of this. A small knock sounded at the door. Mom. Leo's sleepy voice came from the hallway. Maria took a deep breath. Come in, sweetheart. Leo pushed the door open, rubbing his eyes, his curls sticking up in every direction. He climbed onto the bed, sitting cross-legged beside her. Can we see Jordan today? Maria froze. Leo looked up at her, waiting. She smoothed a hand over his curls, trying to steady herself. You really like him, don't you? Leo nodded. Yeah, he's funny. And he listens. Maria swallowed hard. And he listens. The words hit her deeper than she expected. Because that's what had always been missing. Someone who didn't just show up, but stayed. She let out a slow breath. We'll see, okay? Leo smiled, satisfied with that answer, then hopped off the bed. I'm hungry. Maria followed him into the kitchen, grabbing a pan to make breakfast. But even as she moved through the familiar routine, her mind was miles away. Could she really let Jordan in? Could she trust him with Leo's heart, not to mention her own? Her thoughts were interrupted by the buzzing of her phone on the counter. A text. From Jordan. Can I see you both today? I meant what I said, Maria. I'm in this. Maria stared at the screen, her heart pounding. She closed her eyes, exhaling. Then, before she could change her mind, she typed back. Meet us at the park at noon. The park was quiet when Maria and Leo arrived, the sun casting long shadows across the grass. A few kids ran toward the swings, their laughter floating through the crisp autumn air. Leo's eyes scanned the area eagerly. Is he coming? Maria tightened her grip on the strap of her purse. He said he would. Leo nodded, accepting that answer, then ran off toward the slides. Maria inhaled deeply, her chest tightening. She wasn't sure why she was so nervous. Maybe because this was starting to feel real. Not just a passing visit. Not just a moment. Jordan wasn't slipping back into their lives only to disappear again. And that scared her more than anything. A shadow fell across her. Hey, she turned, pulse jumping. Jordan stood there, hands in his pockets, his expression softer than she had ever seen it. Maria swallowed. Hey. His eyes flickered toward Leo, watching him climb the jungle gym with another kid. A small smile tugged at his lips. He's fearless. Maria let out a quiet laugh. Completely. Jordan turned his gaze back to her. Thank you for letting me be here. Maria exhaled slowly. Don't make me regret it. His expression turned serious. I won't. They stood in silence for a moment, the air thick between them. There was so much unsaid, so much history and pain and hope tangled between them. Jordan nodded toward an empty bench. Can we talk? Maria hesitated, but then she followed him, sitting with enough space between them to make it clear she still had her guard up. Jordan rested his elbows on his knees, rubbing his hands together as he stared out at the park. I keep thinking about everything I missed. Maria swallowed. Jordan, no, let me say this. He interrupted gently. I know I can't change the past. I know that. But I need you to know that if I could, I would have been here. Maria clenched her jaw, looking away. That's easy to say now. He turned toward her. I mean it. She sighed, shaking her head. I don't know how to do this, Jordan. I don't know how to just let you in. Jordan studied her for a long moment. What are you really afraid of? Maria let out a humorless laugh. Are you serious? Yes, he said, voice steady. She turned to face him, frustration bubbling up. I'm afraid of you walking away again, Jordan. I'm afraid of Leo getting attached, only for you to decide this isn't convenient anymore. I have spent years making sure he never feels like he's missing anything. I can't. Her voice broke slightly, and she inhaled sharply, willing herself to stay composed. I can't let him get hurt. Jordan's expression softened. Maria, you left once, she whispered. What's stopping you from doing it again? Silence stretched between them. Finally, Jordan exhaled, leaning back. I deserve that. Maria looked away. But I swear to you, he continued, voice quiet but firm, I'm not leaving. She closed her eyes, her heart pounding. I'm here, Jordan said. For him, for you, for as long as you'll let me. Maria swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his gaze. There was no hesitation in his eyes, no doubt, just the truth. And for the first time, Maria felt the tiniest crack in her armor. Jordan turned back toward the playground, watching Leo race another kid up the slide. He's incredible, he said, his voice softer now. You've done an amazing job with him. Maria let out a slow breath. He's my whole world. Jordan nodded. I'd like to be part of it. Maria looked at him, something deep inside her shifting. Maybe, just maybe, she wanted that too. Maria stood in her kitchen later that evening, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter as the quiet hum of the dishwasher filled the space. The scent of leftover pasta lingered in the air, a reminder of the dinner she had barely touched. Her thoughts were everywhere, spinning in 100 directions, colliding, unraveling. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. Letting Jordan back in was supposed to be measured, controlled. But the moment at the park, the way he had looked at Leo, the way he had looked at her, it was breaking down walls she had spent years reinforcing. She closed her eyes, pressing her fingertips to her temples. This was getting too complicated. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Her heart jumped. She already knew who it was. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, hesitating for a second before pulling the door open. Jordan stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, his expression cautious. He wasn't wearing his usual polished confidence. No carefully curated charm, just him. Hey, he said quietly. Maria swallowed. Hey. They stood there for a moment, the space between them too heavy with unspoken words. Jordan exhaled. I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me. Maria leaned against the doorframe. I wasn't sure either. A slow smile tugged at the corner of his lips. At least you're honest. She let out a breath, shaking her head. Jordan, what are you doing here? He hesitated, then ran a hand down his jaw, choosing his words carefully. I didn't want to leave things unfinished. Maria blinked, caught off guard. Unfinished. His eyes met hers steady. This thing between us, whatever it is, it's still there. Her throat tightened. Jordan, I'm not saying we need to figure it out right now, he interrupted gently, but I am saying that ignoring it isn't going to make it go away. Maria's grip on the doorframe tightened. Because he was right. She could pretend all she wanted, but the pull between them hadn't faded. If anything, it was stronger now. Undeniable in the way he looked at her, in the way she felt when he was near. She exhaled, her voice quieter now. I don't know how to let you back in. Jordan studied her, his expression soft but unwavering. Then let me show you how. Maria's breath caught. This was dangerous. She had spent years protecting herself, shielding her heart. Letting him back in meant risking everything. But the way he was looking at her now, it was the same way he had looked at her all those years ago, back when she had believed in them. Her pulse pounded. She was standing at a crossroads, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't know which way to go. A small voice interrupted the moment. Mom! Maria turned to see Leo standing in the hallway, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Jordan straightened slightly, his gaze shifting. Hey, buddy. Leo blinked at him, confused for a second. Then slowly his lips curved into a sleepy smile. You're here. Jordan's chest tightened. Yeah, I'm here. Maria swallowed, something breaking open inside her. Maybe, just maybe. She wanted him to stay. Maria crouched in front of Leo, brushing his curls back from his forehead. His eyelids were heavy, and he let out a little yawn, but he was fighting sleep, his small fingers curling into the hem of her sleeve. You should be in bed, sweetheart, she murmured, keeping her voice soft. Leo blinked up at her, then shifted his gaze to Jordan. Is he staying? Maria's heart stumbled. She could feel Jordan watching her, waiting, but she couldn't look at him. She didn't have an answer, not one she was ready to say out loud. Instead, she smoothed her hand over Leo's back. It's late, baby. Let's get you back to bed. Leo frowned slightly but didn't argue. He took her hand, letting her lead him down the hall. As they reached his room, he paused, looking over his shoulder. Good night, Jordan. Maria turned just in time to see Jordan smile, something warm and steady in his expression. Good night, buddy. Leo grinned sleepily before crawling into bed, tucking himself under the covers. Maria leaned down, pressing a kiss to his forehead. Mom, he mumbled, already half asleep. Maria ran her fingers gently over his curls. Yeah? His eyes fluttered closed. You like him? Maria's breath hitched. She pulled back slightly, her heart pounding as she stared at her son, but he was already drifting off, completely unaware of the quiet storm he had just left in his wake. She swallowed hard, standing slowly. For a moment, she just watched him, trying to steady herself. Then, with a slow exhale, she turned off the lamp and stepped out, closing the door quietly behind her. Jordan was still standing in the entryway, hands in his pockets, watching her carefully. Maria crossed her arms, her throat tight. You shouldn't be here. Jordan's expression didn't change. Then tell me to leave. Maria parted her lips, but the words wouldn't come. Because she didn't want him to leave, and he knew it. Jordan took a slow step closer. Leo's right, isn't he? Maria's pulse pounded. Jordan, he took another step. Tell me I'm wrong. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Jordan exhaled, searching her face. Maria, I get it. This is complicated, but I know what I want. I want to be here. I want to be in Leo's life. And if you let me, I want to be in yours too. Maria closed her eyes briefly, her chest aching. This was too much, too fast, too real. I can't, she whispered. Jordan's jaw tensed. Why? She forced herself to meet his gaze, her voice breaking. Because if I let you in, if I let Leo believe this is real, and then you leave. She shook her head, looking away. I won't survive that. and neither will he. The words hung between them, heavy, raw. Jordan swallowed hard, stepping even closer, his voice softer now. Maria, I'm not leaving. She let out a quiet, shaky breath, but she didn't move. He reached out slowly, as if giving her a chance to pull away. When she didn't, he gently curled his fingers around hers. Maria felt the warmth of his touch, steady and grounding. It had been so long since she had let herself need anyone. Jordan's voice dropped to a whisper. Let me prove it to you. Maria's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him. For the first time in years, she wanted everything he was offering. She let out a slow exhale, her fingers tightening slightly around his. And for the first time, she didn't pull away. Maria wasn't sure how long they stood there, hands lightly intertwined, hearts pounding in the quiet space between them. It felt like a fragile moment, like one wrong move would shatter whatever delicate thing was forming between them. She should have let go. She should have stepped back, reinforced the distance she had worked so hard to maintain. But she didn't. Jordan didn't rush her. He just watched her, his grip steady, but not forceful, like he was waiting for her to make the next move. Maria swallowed hard. This is dangerous. Jordan's lips twitched slightly. You always did like to play it safe. Her brows lifted, a mix of exasperation and disbelief flickering across her face. Safe? You think I played it safe? Jordan tilted his head slightly. Didn't you? Maria let out a quiet laugh, though there was no humor in it. She pulled her hand away, wrapping her arms around herself. I raised a child alone, Jordan. I worked 3 jobs when he was a baby, barely sleeping some nights. I fought to give him everything he needed, without ever asking for help. That wasn't playing it safe. That was surviving. Jordan's jaw tightened, his gaze flickering with something raw. I didn't mean it like that. Maria shook her head, looking away. I made choices based on what I had to do, and now you show up, and suddenly I'm supposed to trust you, to believe you won't walk away when things get hard? Jordan took a breath, stepping closer. I know I have to earn that trust, Maria. I'm not asking for it overnight. She didn't answer, her arms tightening around herself. Jordan exhaled. You're scared. Her gaze snapped to his, sharp. Of course I'm scared. Jordan's voice softened. Then tell me what you need from me. Maria stared at him, something breaking loose inside her. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to say, I need you to show up every day. I need you to be there when Leo needs you. I need to know you're not just doing this because of guilt or obligation, but because you truly want to. But those words wouldn't come. Instead, she let out a slow, shaky breath. I don't know. Jordan held her gaze. Then let's figure it out together. Maria swallowed hard, her heart pounding. Before she could respond, a small voice interrupted. Mom? Maria turned quickly to see Leo standing in the hallway, rubbing his eyes. She took a breath, forcing herself to steady. What's wrong, baby? Leo yawned, shuffling forward. I heard voices. Maria crouched down, brushing his curls back. Everything's okay. You should be in bed. Leo blinked at her, then looked past her to Jordan. His sleep-heavy expression softened into something more awake. You're still here, he mumbled. Jordan smiled. Yeah, buddy, I'm still here. Leo stared at him for a second longer. Then, without warning, he stepped forward and wrapped his small arms around Jordan's waist. Maria froze. Jordan did too. For a moment he didn't move, like he was afraid if he did, the moment would slip away. Then, slowly, carefully, he crouched down, gently resting a hand on Leo's back. Maria felt something swell in her chest, something warm and painful all at once. Leo pulled back slightly, blinking sleepily. You can stay if you want. Maria's breath caught. Jordan looked up at her, eyes unreadable. He didn't answer right away, like he was waiting for her to say something, to tell him if this was okay. Maria exhaled shakily, then reached for Leo's hand. "Come on," she murmured. "Let's get you back to bed." Leo nodded sleepily, letting her guide him toward his room. Jordan stayed where he was, watching them disappear down the hall. And when Maria came back a few minutes later, standing in the doorway, she didn't tell him to leave. She just looked at him. And for the first time she let herself wonder, what if he really was here to stay? The sky above Charleston was painted in hues of deep gold and soft lavender as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The warm air carried the scent of blooming jasmine, mixing with the distant sound of waves lapping against the harbor. It was the kind of evening that made the world feel softer, quieter, like anything was possible. Maria stood on the back porch, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, watching Leo and Jordan in the yard. Leo was explaining something animatedly, waving his hands as he spoke, and Jordan was crouched beside him, nodding along like whatever his son was saying was the most important thing he had ever heard. And maybe to him it was. Maria exhaled, pressing her lips together. She had spent so long building walls, convincing herself that she and Leo were fine on their own, that they didn't need anyone else, that letting Jordan in would only lead to heartbreak. But now, watching them together, she realized something she hadn't before. Leo had been waiting for this, for a father, for his father. And Maria, she had been waiting too, waiting for someone to prove her wrong, to show her that love didn't have to mean loss, that maybe, just maybe, Jordan was exactly who he had promised he would be. And damn him, he was doing it. She tightened her grip around her mug, inhaling slowly, steadying herself. Jordan turned then, as if sensing her gaze. Their eyes met across the yard, and for a moment, everything else faded. There was no past, no fear, no what-ifs. Just them. Jordan gave her a small, almost hesitant smile. And for the first time in years, Maria let herself smile back. "Okay, I don't want to rush genius," Jordan said, sitting cross-legged on the grass beside Leo. "But you've been working on this blueprint for 20 minutes now, and I'm starting to think you're designing an entire city." Leo huffed, erasing a line on his sketchpad with the kind of concentration that made Jordan bite back a grin. "It's not just a house," Leo explained, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "It's our house." Jordan's breath hitched slightly. "Yeah?" Leo nodded, flipping the sketchpad around so Jordan could see. The drawing was a little messy, lines overlapping, some windows slightly uneven, but it was unmistakable. A 2-story house with a big porch, a backyard big enough for a dog, just like he had always wanted, and in the front yard, 3 tiny stick figures. Maria, Jordan, Leo. Jordan swallowed hard, his chest tightening. This is pretty amazing, buddy." Leo beamed, proud of his work. "Mum said you live in New York." Jordan exhaled slowly. "I do." Leo hesitated. "So, are you going to stay?" The words were quiet, uncertain, filled with a hope that made Jordan's throat tighten. Before he could answer, Maria's voice cut through the air. "Leo, come inside and wash up. Dinner's almost ready." Leo scrambled to his feet, gripping his sketchpad like it was made of gold. "Coming!" He dashed toward the house, leaving Jordan sitting there, still staring at the drawing. "Are you gonna stay?" The question repeated in his head over and over. This wasn't a weekend visit. This wasn't just reconnecting for a few days. This was a choice, and he already knew his answer. Maria was setting the table when she felt Jordan's presence behind her. She didn't turn right away. He was quiet for a moment. Then, finally, he spoke. "Leo asked if I was staying." Maria swallowed. She set the last plate down and turned, arms crossed. "What did you say?" Jordan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I told him I hadn't decided yet." Maria's heart clenched slightly, though she didn't let it show. "Honest?" Jordan nodded. "Yeah." She pressed her lips together. "And now?" Jordan met her gaze, his voice steady. I'm staying. Her breath caught. Jordan took a slow step closer. I don't want to be a father who visits. I don't want to be a sometimes parent. I want to be his parent, every day. Maria's chest tightened. Jordan, she started, but he shook his head. I mean it, Maria, he interrupted gently. I don't know exactly what this looks like yet. I don't have all the answers. But I know one thing, I'm not leaving. Maria exhaled sharply, turning away, pressing a hand against the counter. This was too much, too real. You don't get to change everything overnight, she whispered. Jordan stepped closer. I know. Her fingers curled against the cool surface. And I don't know if I can just let you in. Jordan's voice softened. Then let me earn it. Maria closed her eyes, her heart pounding. She had been waiting for this moment, dreading this moment, but now that it was here, she realized something. She wanted him to stay. She wanted to believe him. Slowly she turned back to him, searching his face, waiting for the part where he flinched, where he backed away, where he made her regret even considering this. But he didn't. He just stood there, waiting, hoping, loving them, even if he hadn't said the words yet. Maria exhaled, and for the first time she let go of the fear. Okay, she whispered. Jordan's breath hitched. Okay, she nodded. Okay. A slow, relieved smile spread across his face. He took another step forward, closing the distance between them. Maria? She shook her head, already knowing what he was going to say. I'm still scared. Jordan reached for her hand, fingers brushing lightly against hers. So am I. She swallowed hard, looking down at their hands, at the space between them. Then, slowly, carefully, she closed the gap. A few weeks later, they stood outside the house Maria had lived in for years, boxes stacked near the front steps. Leo ran ahead, already excited about the new place, talking about where his art supplies would go, where his desk would be. Maria exhaled, standing beside Jordan, staring at the life they were leaving behind. You sure about this? She asked. Jordan slid his arm around her waist, pulling her close. Yeah. She turned her head slightly, searching his face. No regrets? Jordan smiled, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Not a single one. Maria exhaled, leaning into him. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of what came next, because they were building something that lasted. Together.